Welcome to Politics as Usual at usualpolitics.com. Dr. Moriel McDuffy, your host. And today I'm here with Jourdeanna Yates. Am I saying that right? Jourdeanna?
Jourdeanna.
Jourdeanna Yates. She's the founder of Chosen Career Consultants. She has over 20 years of business management, leadership, recruiting, training, and coaching experience. And she chose career coaching to help people set and achieve their own goals. So, Jourdeanna, let me ask you first, what do career coaches do for people? So if I was a client and I wanted to come see a career coach, what could you do for me?
Well, it is going to vary dependent on each individual. I mean, really the ultimate idea is for you to spend some time with each client, really kind of getting to know where they've been, where they're at, and where they want to go. And so part of that is just, taking an opportunity to get to know someone so that collectively together we can come up with the processes and the steps that are going to be necessary to move towards career success and move towards something beyond what they're doing now, regardless of what level they're at, really. So it's really different based on each individual, but ultimately the goal is to, encourage, motivate, and inspire people to reach for the next step, the next level.
Okay, it sounds good. So if I'm somebody who's just totally lost, I don't know what direction I'm going in, and I need some help just figuring out where my strengths lie and figuring out a career, could you help me with that?
Okay. Absolutely. So really the first thing that I would do, I know a lot of career guidance and career coaching tends to focus on these assessments, right? Like they want you to take these personality assessments to try to identify what types of careers would be best suited for you. What I find is that there's some people who have test anxiety, and even if it's a basic assessment just about themselves, the thought of having to take that test gives them anxiety. And so That's not what I want to do. I don't want to start there. I'm not about letting an assessment or a test do my job before me, really.
Right.
So really what I like to do is I like to take about 25 minutes and go through really job history.
Could you go back and repeat that one thing real quick, because for some reason there was some static on this end. I want to make sure that everybody can hear it. You were saying you go through.
No, great. Right. So I go through a pretty detailed interview questionnaire with each applicant. And really it's our opportunity to spend some time so I can get to know them. We'll talk about employment history. We'll talk about educational background. We'll talk about interests, likes, dislikes. We'll talk about support committee. We'll talk about, people that are encouraging or discouraging. And then from there, I can guide them towards what career opportunities are going to make sense. And really, it's kind of crazy. A lot of times it really does come just from that initial conversation, and the key is getting someone to open up so that they're willing to say, what I really want to do is manage a farm, or, no matter what crazy thing it could be, getting people to think outside of the box so that they're able to start looking at other opportunities for themselves. And then we can translate that into, okay, how do we turn that into some type of employability or some type of employment that's going to allow you to earn not just a living, but a sustainable, a viable, a living that's going to, be above minimum wage and just kind of working paycheck to paycheck. So
okay. Well, it sounds like you're providing a viable service and something that I'm sure a lot of people could use. I think people, who do struggle with poverty, struggle with career and trying to figure out a career that they could get into. I know there's different qualifications for different careers. But I want to shift focus right now. Let's talk about the main subject that we wanted to get into today, which is the reasons basically that keep people from starting their own business. And
Okay.
that's one of the things that you presented recently. So if you
Yeah.
could just you can just jump in. What are some of those reasons?
Well, so it's crazy, right? Because everyone always wants the keys to success. But I believe that you've got to focus first on what are those things that hold us back so that you can recognize them. And then from there, you can move towards what's going to make you successful. So the first
Absolutely.
thing that we talked about, and it was actually like just sort of a little social networking event with a bunch of small business owners, entrepreneurs that are trying to get started. And the first thing that we talked about was fear. Fear is
Right.
the number one, through all my years here and working with individuals that are looking to better themselves, the thing that's held people back the most is fear. And so I asked everyone in the room a question, and I said, how many of you want to go to jail? How many of you want to go to jail?
Right.
And of course, not one person in the room raised their hand. And so my point in asking that question is fear is a self-imposed jail. It's a
Mm-hmm.
self-imposed prison. You're putting yourself in prison. And what you have to decide, because we all have fearful moments, right? Like
Absolutely.
we all have fearful moments. But what we have to decide is how long we want our sentence to be. Do you want to be in jail for a day, an hour? I mean, an hour, a day, a month, 10 years? I mean, how long do you want to be in jail? And so that piece there, just trying to get people to rebrand that fear and turn it into what's the opposite, faith and hope, and just not living in that prison. So that was the big sort of number one thing for me was the fear piece of it, for sure.
Absolutely. Now, were there any? Because that's interesting, right? But were there any specific? Did anybody give a specific reason what they were afraid of?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of them were. It's weird. It's a fear of failure, right? Like
Okay.
you're afraid to start because you're afraid you'll fail. And the reality is that you've already failed if you don't start, right? Like, so you're guaranteed not to win if you
Right.
don't start. And so, I think for most people, admitting to it at first is the hard part too, like admitting that they're fearful. No one wants to say, I'm scared or I'm afraid or I don't, I'm not
Right.
sure. So, getting them to admit to it and then realizing that it's a fear of failure. And that fear of failure comes from just not knowing how to go about it, not knowing what approaches to take. And that's why it's so important to to have resources, to have people that you can kind of reach out to. So often we want to retreat inward,
Right.
and it doesn't work. You've got to be able to have a really good sort of network of people and resources that you can reach out to. And that's why kind of what you do and the things that you're talking are so huge, because you're providing people resources, for sure.
Absolutely. And while you were talking, and when you said that fear, you talked about fear of losing or fear of failing. It reminded me of something,
Yeah.
a sports mentality, something that a coach told me in high school. Well, he told everybody, the
Okay.
whole team. And he said, always play to win, never play not to lose. It's almost like you're playing not to lose. Like, let me just play it safe. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to, you're playing not to lose the game, but you're not playing to win the game. And it's just an interesting mentality. It's two different mindsets. Whereas, you don't have to start out, you don't have to quit your job to go sort of business. But I'll let you, I know you do the job, coach.
No, but that's okay. So that's part of it, right? So because we talked about sort of resources, fear comes when you don't really have a roadmap or you don't have a plan, right? And
Right.
so the idea is that no one's saying I want you to jump out of a plane without a parachute, right?
Right.
We want you to pack a parachute, and part of that is sitting down and coming up with what your plan is. And so, I've seen individuals that, have been licensed therapists, and they've quit their jobs because they wanted to start their own practice. And so, some of them have just cold turkey quit and jumped out on their own. Others, took a little bit longer. And so I think
Absolutely.
in terms of coming up with your roadmap and your plan and sitting down and saying, okay, here's what my deadlines are. Here's what my, what my launch date's going to be, or what my plans are going to be for that, is super important. And most people don't like to give themselves deadlines because there's a pressure when there's a deadline. And you have to have that deadline, or you're never going to start. You're never going to be able to start your own business. And that's going to be huge. So having the game plan, I think, is really just, it will help to calm the fear if you have a better understanding of what it is to do.
Right. And that makes sense. So what other factors contributed to not starting your own business? Because fear is number one.
The second one, and this is going to sound kind of, I guess they kind of go hand in hand, but the second one is comparison, right? Okay. And so what I mean by that is, let's say you want to start a landscaping business, right? But every time you leave out your house, it goes, well, there's another landscaping truck, and there's another there's already so many, there's, you start comparing yourself and what it is you want to do to other people. And you know what I mean? What comparison does is, comparison allows you to see the best and the good in other people and the worst in you. And so it essentially is you putting yourself down, right? It's you kind of thinking negative, well, I'm not going to compare to that, or they're doing so much better than what I could do. And that's difficult, especially because, part of starting your own business is you really should do a competition study, right? You do want to take a look at what competitors are in your area and what they're doing. And, you want to start using some of that in terms of a blueprint, but you can't let that comparison or those, that research that you're doing, you can't allow that to stop you from jumping out on your own. Each one of us has a unique skill set that we bring to whatever we do that's going to be different. So even if you and I are doing things that are similar, there's going to be a difference. And, I will be needed and you will be needed, and there's enough out there for everybody to eat. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean?
Absolutely.
There's definitely enough out there.
Absolutely. It's interesting as you say comparison. And what that reminds me of is somebody with low self-esteem or depression, or, and I'm not even talking about clinical depression, but just even situational. It's you're constantly looking at somebody else and you can never measure up.
Yeah.
It's always a losing proposition.
Well, you know what? And I call that self-hate. I call that negative talk, right? That's negative talk. But if you had somebody talk negatively about you, or if we had someone talk negatively about us, we're quick to jump to the defense. Don't say that about me. But when we talk negative about ourselves, we don't get on ourselves like that. We don't say, hey, Jourdeanna, knock it off. You're better than this. Don't go down that rabbit hole. But it happens. It happens.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you had one more, right? Correct? One more characteristic?
One more. So this one is the third one we all suffer from. It is procrastination.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And you know what? I tie the procrastination, though, in with accountability. And most people don't like that word, accountability, because they don't want to be held accountable.
Okay.
But the reality is we procrastinate. And for me, how you kind of counteract that, right, in terms of the procrastination, is you need an accountability partner. You need someone that can hold you accountable, and not, not in a bad way, but just say, listen,
Right.
this is what your goal is. This is what you need, what and how you need to get there. And so part of that is who's in your circle. So you start
Mm-hmm.
thinking about, we tend to travel with people that are like-minded, right? So we're in groups
Right.
of people who are like us. And then there's those individuals that, we try to mentor and bring up to our level. But how many of us are comfortable with having people in three categories? People in our level, people that we're trying to bring up, and then people that are above us, people that are already doing it, or people that are already successful. Are you comfortable traveling in that circle so that they can get you out of the procrastination, hold you accountable, and help to elevate you to where they're at? And that's that becomes part of it, is just who's in your circle, for sure.
That makes sense. Interesting. Because a lot of what you're saying matches up with this mental health treatment. And over the years, I've done treatment for kids with behavior issues who are on juvenile probation, and that's one of the things we looked at when I was doing multi-systemic therapy. You look at the peer system and poisoning that peer system, and because usually when you see one behavior, they're around somebody who has a very similar behavior. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So these three barriers, right?
Yes.
Fear, comparison, and procrastination. What can people do to get past these barriers?
Well, listen, the reality is that you may go in and out of these during any given time. And you, like you said, as a mental health professional, like you know this, right? Like, just because I conquer fear of one thing doesn't mean that it may not creep up again. And so part of this is recognizing it within yourself so
Mm-hmm.
that you're able to really start to speak to it. And so, what I always make people do is I make them write out what they want.
Mm-hmm.
Start off by taking a moment and actually writing what you want out. And so, I'm one of those, like, I want you to dream big. Like, I want you to swim for the fences. So if your goal is to, start a business, I don't want you to think small. Like, it's okay to start big, because you're going to need to be able to celebrate the small wins. And when you get a chance to celebrate those small wins and start seeing how you're working towards the big one, it becomes huge. There's a young lady who, she started off as a CNA. She started off working in a nursing home as a certified nursing assistant. She ended up becoming a medical assistant in advance, got certified. She's now in school to become a nurse. But really, what she wants to do is she wants to be a midwife. She wants to start her own midwife business, and
Oh,
that's where she started with her goal setting. She knew what she wanted to do, and she took these baby steps to get there because she needed to in terms of her life. So, I think the first thing is write out what you want so that it's okay if it's big. And then just start celebrating the small wins that you get as you're working towards it. And if you can celebrate the small wins, it'll start to quiet the fear, right? It'll start having you not compare yourself to others because you're too busy celebrating yourself. And really, it will stop you from procrastinating, because anytime we see progress, it's like, oh yeah, well, let me see more progress. It's like, if I'm trying to lose
absolutely.
and a couple pounds come off, well, then I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing because I want to see more. And so if you can start that way in terms of celebrating the wins, I can't tell you how much it will help individuals to get the confidence that they need to be able to move forward.
Absolutely. You sure you don't have some type of psychological practice or
Well, I
so
need
this
a
is just
couch or
job
something,
coaching?
right?
Yeah, no, it sounds good and it makes sense. It makes perfect sense. So to clarify for everybody who's gonna watch this video,
Yes.
what types of businesses are we talking about here? Because some people might say, that's not the type of business that I'm talking about. I don't think that applies. But what type of businesses are we talking about people starting?
Well, I think that's the joy of it. Especially, I mean, let's realize that 2020 has been a challenging year for a lot of individuals, right? We've
Mhm.
had a pandemic. We have had so much social injustice. Not that it only is in 2020, but we've seen so many things come about as a part of it here in 2020.
Mhm.
And the reality is that our unemployment rate hit 14.7% in
Absolutely.
the month of April. I mean, and it's slowly coming down, but it's still over 10% right now. And so a lot of people during this pandemic have been thinking about, how do I make money? Or how do I not get myself caught in relying on these companies and this and how do I start off on my own? And so I think the joy of that is that, I mean, it could be any kind of, it could be an online business, it can be product-based business, it could be a service-based business, it could be blue collared, and meaning, landscaping, construction. It can be, we talked about mental health. It could be
Right.
individuals wanting to start specific mental health, to deal with racial injustice, or, so the joy of it. And I think that's what I've enjoyed so much about 2020, is that it really has given individuals the opportunity to think outside of what what we may think would be the normal businesses, right? Like
Right.
what you might think of as normal industries to go into. I mean, there's so many different things that individuals can have. I mean, the technology now in terms of virtual and being able to meet with clients all over the world. And so it really, I don't think that they're limited. I don't believe that individuals are limited. Whatever item you want to, whether it's a product or a service, there's a way to make it happen. And that's the joy of the time we're in right now, for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's ironic that you say virtual when, this is a business that I started only maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and here we are virtually discussing. I mean, talking about this topic, and I we both did it not recently this year.
Yeah, yes, this year, exactly. But you know what? This year has motivated people in a different way.
Mhm.
Um, it's something when unemployment is that high. It's something when you are sequestered in your house and you can't go anywhere and you're left to your own thoughts. And
Mhm.
so when you start thinking, I mean, they use that word essential to death, right? They kept saying essential jobs, essential workers. And so for everyone who was at home who wasn't working, what you felt was that you weren't essential, that you weren't
Right.
important, that what you did wasn't important. And
Mhm.
so now it makes you start trying to think, well, I need to be essential. I need to do
Right.
something where I'm going to be essential. And that's where just a lot of small businesses have popped up, because out of the
Mhm.
motivation of, I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to be stuck in this type of mindset or place that I'm in right now. Forget you
Mhm.
2020. I'm gonna start something on my own because I
Absolutely.
have a plan.
And it's funny that you say that. I actually read an article, and it was actually an article kind of ripping Congress a little bit because of how they talked about the stimulus when you lost like so many jobs, and they were saying,
Yeah.
"Oh, we're not going to give money to somebody not to work. They're going to have motivation to stay home." But there is a psychological effect when you don't have a job. There's a lot of people who start to feel worthless and useless because this is what they see their job as part of themselves. And everybody's different and they're oriented differently. But there's a lot of the fact is there's a lot of people that feel that way, and even if it's just in the provider role, like as a mom or a dad, and you're like, oh, I don't have any money, I can't, provide for my kids. There's a psychological thing there. And I think you described it very, very well. So,
You know what? That's
uh,
that's what happens in the interview questionnaire that I do. A lot of times those are the things that motivate people to get into a career, because, you know, their child's looking at them and they can't do right now, or they don't feel like they're setting an example. So those basic human desires are the things that also push people to make things happen, to make moves happen. And that's what I want people to believe. I want everyone to know that they have choices, that there are choices and options available to them, for sure.
Absolutely. So what would you say to a person who watched this video and said, you know what, it sounds good and everything, but I still have doubts?
You know what? It wouldn't be normal if they didn't have doubts, right? Like, you wouldn't be sort of human if you didn't have doubts. And I guess the thing that I always say to people at this point, nothing beats a fail but a try. Like, what does it hurt at this point? Like, if you're in a place where you are unhappy, where you feel like, whether you're unemployed, whether you're underemployed, whether you are just, you know, plain unhappy at your job, what do you have to lose in terms of looking into other options and seeing what choices you have? So I joke, I keep these on my desk all the time. As a kid, loved they're Choose Your Adventure books. I don't know if you remember these things here, but
I do
dating
remember
myself a little bit. You remember? Okay. So the cool thing, they were pretty cheesy books, but essentially in every single book, like, you would read and then you would get to a page and it would give you options, right? Like, it would say to you, if you take the tunnel into the grove for added protection, turn to page 58, right? And so the point is that you wouldn't read for 42 pages, and then when it came to a choice, you wouldn't go, you know what, I can't figure out what I want to do, so never mind, I'm gonna put this book down. You would choose. Or for me, like, I would read one and then go back and read the other one.
Right.
And so my point to people, though, is that, you know, you going through life and not making a choice is like closing the book after reading 42 pages.
Absolutely,
Don't close the book. Make some choices. And if that choice doesn't work initially, guess what? You get to go back and pick another option. You got another option. And so I just try to get people to truly see that they have choices, and that it's okay to step out and to rebrand that fear into faith, and just step out into something new for themselves, for sure.
Yeah, I like that. Rebrand the fear into faith. I like it.
That's it. Rebrand it.
Absolutely. So the last question, right, is, if you, in terms of your position now and what you've seen of people. Well, first of all, what area do you serve? Let me ask you that.
So right now, I've been doing a lot of work just in the communities, right? Like in underserved communities, you know, communities where individuals, you know, don't necessarily even know what a career coach is. You know, it's one thing if people are out there and looking for information, but the idea is that there's some people that just don't look. And so being able to do you know, these little mini workshops in different communities, or for different organizations, or different churches, or different social groups, or, you know, different things, it allows me to kind of reach a group of individuals who maybe don't feel like they have choices or options. And so that part has been, I think, the most beneficial in terms of being able to do it, is being out in the community to be able to service them.
Okay.
And then, you know, I have a few clients that are, you know, already educated, need some interview prep. So you know, I have a buddy who was looking for a new job. He just finished his master's degree, and he was getting ready to interview for a position. And so we just went through an interview role play, you know, asking questions, talked about how to negotiate salary, you know, things like that. And so, you know, it's pretty versatile. And that's what I want people to know, regardless of where you're at, regardless of what point you are in your life or in your professional career, it's okay to seek out help, and I'm here to help. Like that's the whole
Absolutely.
point.
So do you have are you virtual, like a virtual business? And
It's a combination right now. So meeting with clients right now, I've been doing a lot of the virtual intake. And then obviously for the group functions, I've actually been doing small social distancing events, little social networking, 20, 30 people.
Okay.
And those have been face to face. I mean, like, listen, like most of us, I crave the face to face. I'd love to do everything face to face, but the times that we're in right now require a little bit of flexibility. So I can meet with people virtually, or I can, have them come to some of these different workshops and events that I'm doing as well.
Okay. Are you touching the entire Delaware Valley, or?
Yeah, so the first two events that I did were actually in Wilmington,
Oh,
Delaware.
wow. Okay.
The other event that I just did last Saturday was actually in Chester, Pennsylvania. I live in South Jersey, so I'm based out of South Jersey. So yes, I'm tri-state. So the tri-state area for sure.
Okay. So my final question this time, I promise,
No,
is
you're good.
how would somebody go about getting in contact with you if they want your services?
So right now, the best way to reach me is going to be to go to my Facebook page, which is Chosen Career Consultants. And from there, my contact information, email, telephone number is all there. And so, that's probably the best way. They can also reach me at 856-265-4927. And that's also on the page as well. And so we'll have an opportunity to, kind of set it up so that way they can schedule a free consultation right there on the actual Facebook page. But that's going to be the best way right now. So if they're looking for some one-on-one, if they're looking to have me come talk to a small group, whether it's high school seniors trying to figure out what they're going to do next year, or if it's adults that, are finding themselves in situations where they don't know what to do. So, at this point, kind of any age group that needs that help for sure.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you have a lot of range within the groups that you work with.
Yeah, absolutely. And that just comes from years of, dealing with students from, I used to joke it was like 18 to 80 at one point in terms of career opportunities. So yes, for sure.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for coming on, Miss Jourdeanna Yates. And if anybody wants to get in contact with her, you can contact her at the information. If you have any other questions, you can also contact me, Dr. Moriel McDuffy, at pau@usualpolitics.com. You can go to the website. The email is on the website. And anything that you get to me, I'll make sure that Miss Yates gets it. And thanks for being a part of Politics as Usual at usualpolitics.com. Signing off.